Greeting you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. So I'm going to share about how Moona's Magica has come to be on this earth and who I am and the overall vision and mission of this being that is sitting right here. So I'm gonna start at a place where one could say the spiritual journey in this life got activated and remembered. I was from 18 years old to 21 years old in full blown alcohol addiction, which ended up turning into a lot of other addictions, such as like theft and cocaine addiction and tobacco addiction, uh, addiction to sexual activities, and basically I lived my life in this state where I was, looking forward to the next drink, and then I was an artist in the sense of being a painter, and I did sort of graffiti style artwork, or if one is aware of the painter Basquiat, this kind of artwork of painting and kind of just like abstract and expressing one's emotions onto the canvas and putting messages onto the canvas. And yeah, I just lived in this way where I was basically just drinking and running around the city, and um, there was a day where I ended up, one could say, overdosing. I ended up taking all of these different substances that didn't mix well, and I ended up at my uncle's house. I was walking the streets and I was like blacking out, and there was a part of my consciousness that noticed that I was basically I was about to pass out. I was about to black out on the street, and in my mind I was calling forth like help and support. I was so sick. I felt so ill. In all ways, the description in these words can't really do justice to the feeling I had. So I ended up, I showed up at my uncle's, and he called me in and was like, "Oh, hey, Steven." And I basically told him like I took this, and like I don't feel good and I feel like I need to go to the hospital. So he was like, "Oh wow, this is like pretty serious, like even the fact that I showed up at his house and was just honest right away, but also what I told him, all of these things I was on, uh, which I took the night before, and um, basically they rushed me to the hospital. My uncle called my aunt who worked at the hospital, and I ended up rushing in there, and I think I stayed there for about a day in recovery. And prior to all of this, I grew up in this society that in a sense is terminally ill, in the sense that there was no spirituality. Um, You know, like I was never told that I was one with God, that I was one with the Creator. And obviously, you know, growing up and being exposed to all of the distortions of this this dark age, really, uh, where so many beings are unaware of who they are. And I too was one of this being, and I guess that's just, you know, the way it was. And I remember though my dad having an interest in like Eckhart Tolle, and I remember like seeing the Power of Now book like on the shelf, and that stood out to me as a kid, like, or like seeing this book Mind, Body, Spirit. And yeah, like there was that spark. But yeah, just everything that I've noticed now was that everything was flipped, right? Like when I woke up again in this life on having never left, I realized that like everything was twisted, where an easy way to put it is that we're looking from the illusion, not at it. So when you are looking from the ego and the mind and you're looking for freedom, you're not going to find it, because it is the barrier or the blockage to realizing the inherent freedom which is here and now, which is conscious being. And basically, yeah, growing up in the society and all of the sexual distortions and violence, you know, playing violent games as a video games as a child, and watching violent movies, listening to violent music, all of this my spirit was being sickened by and poisoned by, you know, but I didn't know. So that is the inherent innocence, and I guess the naivety, and wanting to just fit in and do what we feel is right, because that's just how it was, you know, which is obviously perfection, because all is perfection and has led up to this moment. And then obviously I don't know about the accumulated karma from past lives, because when we incarnate into this earth plane, there is something called the veil of forgetting. And in the law of one material, the raw material, you know, Ra speaks about this. When you incarnate into a third density planet, there's the veil of forgetting, and that's designed within the logos and within this divine design of the universe, because in that veil of forgetting, the choice of choosing the positive or the negative polarity, and then understanding the physics of the universe, basically, you know, we go one way or the other. So I was definitely walking a little bit of a negatively polarized path, which had to do with, you know, lying, cheating, stealing, poisoning my body, and then obviously hurting the ones around me, because I was a full-blown self-centered addict, right? So, and ultimately realizing that I was addicted to the ego mind, which then has all of its infinite addictions to objects. But I realize now that that feeling I was wanting was within the substance that I consumed, that temporarily shut down the illusion in the mind, and then I was able to feel that bliss come through of my real self, which is actually just what, these substances do. But anyways, going back to the story of this being who has now become Moona's Magica, and returning back to this moment in the hospital, and my family was, coming in and realized that, wow, Steven he's sick, right? My brother coming, realizing, oh, he's sick. And basically, I believe it was the next day that there was this sort of intervention from my family that kind of forced me to go to rehab and go to a center. And in Toronto, Ontario, where I live, there's free withdrawal management centers. And basically, I ended up, by like my family's opinion, wanting to obviously see their son get well and start to heal, but not knowing anything about the insidious nature of addiction. So what happened was I said, yes, I'll go, and I showed up at this place, St. Joseph's, which was an extension of this hospital in the city of Toronto. And I was at this rehabilitation center just kind of clueless, and there would be these meetings that went on, and it was the first time that I was exposed to like fellowship and 12-step recovery meetings. Basically, yeah, I sat there and just kind of everything sunk in, and I think that was in maybe 2019 or early 2020. And what happened was I ended up leaving this detox center, and I basically just went back out onto the streets, and there was no really remembrance of the fact that I just was hospitalized. And so fast forward, there was basically this year or year and a half or span of time where it got really bad. I ended up in the hospital like dozens of times from several scenarios of like overdoses or violence or getting caught stealing alcohol, or everything I was under the influence by. Anytime there was some sort of altercation with the law, the police, I was under the influence. And yeah, beings that knew me at the time kind of knew me as this like wild, kind of like free-spirited man that was this artist and just kind of went around, painted, sold a painting, and then bought more. And I ended up basically just I was in and out of detox centers, and I would check myself in because I would go on like month-long binges, and then I would go back in and kind of I was getting introduced to recovery, and I loved going to these places because I knew if I was out on the streets, then I would be using. So I would literally go like check myself in just to feel safe, just to feel that like I was okay and I was loved, you know? And basically, it ended up being that there was just this one day after like in and out, in and out. I woke up after a night of regular use, like alcohol, cocaine, and the way that I felt, I knew that I was like the feeling that I've described as I was gonna die. I felt so sick, and I felt like death itself. And I called my dad, and I told him, like, I told him I'm ready to get clean, and he basically picked me up, and we ended up, you know, he drove me to this really nasty detox center, and something in me just changed. Like I had a spark that was ignite. We call it the grace of God. And I basically I got a job and started working at this thrift store called Value Village, and I remember just after like I was withdrawed and like detoxed and I was kind of back to health, I basically moved back in with my mom and dad, and then um, they were supporting me in the way, knowing that I needed a place to stay and to sleep and to eat. And so I got this job at this thrift store, and they put me in the book section, and I was biking to work every day, and but I was feeling good, like I was just going, and just something in me switched. And then I would see these books. Specifically, there was this one book that stood out to me. I remember seeing like Aldous Huxley as the foreword, and obviously Huxley is I believe there's the Doors of Perception, and kind of like a classic book in that like psychedelic community. And he was opening a book for this fellow Jiddu Krishnamurti, and the book was called The First and Last Freedom. And I clearly remember like opening up this book, and this was while I began to go to meetings every night for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I basically showed up at a meeting every single night. I remember I missed one meeting in like a year and a half span, and I just loved the community. I loved these meetings, and so I was doing that every night along with the 12 steps, and I had a sponsor, and we were going through the the work that's in the big book. And then during the day, I was also, like, I got into Eckhart Tolle. I started reading A New Earth and, like, reading The Power of Now, and then finding these books that I just naturally was resonating with at Value Village. And then I would come across, through, like, reading Krishnamurti and then the 12 Steps, and I was told about this fellow by the name of Paul Hederman. And this man had a huge, huge impact on my life. And Paul Hederman taught non-duality. And then through Paul Hederman, I heard about Ramana Maharshi. And then I got this book called Be As You Are. And then I was basically, like, going home and I was painting, and I started to create visionary art. So I got back into painting, and these paintings that were coming through were coming from my soul. And I basically, one night, I was listening to Paul, and he talked about, like, making the switch, like putting the horse in front of the cart, and basically, like, he would say things like, you can't use the Buddha to seek the Buddha, or you can't, like, you can't escape an imaginary place. And I got it. I realized that I was before the mind, and that I am awareness. And I would read Ramana and the teachings of, like, who am I, and I started to practice self-inquiry, and there was this awakening into the fact that I existed prior to thoughts. And that has become very stable now, like 7 or 8 years later it was 2017 that I got sober. And basically I just became I became awake to life, and through getting into all these teachers like Ramana and Ram Dass, and I just went through, like, all of it. I got all the books from, like, quantum physics and, like, Ram Dass books, and I studied A Course in Miracles, and I did the lessons in the course, and got into all these teachers like Papaji, and listened to teachings from all of these masters like Anandamai Ma, and these Zen masters like Huang Po, and I basically got all the books, and I had the book with me, and I studied. And these are the kind of books that you read one sentence and then you just stop, and you realize, like, wow, it's like it's pointing to the essence of what we are. So all of this led to then my whole being shifted, and I realized that service, and obviously through the rooms of recovery, it's all about service to others. And when we realize in the law of one, like service to others and then service to self, and how service to self is the negative polarity and service to others is the positive. So it's really realizing that, life is about service. And then after working years at Value Village, and then I started to do some trade work, and this is all simultaneously like first priority is recovery and health, and started to get conscious about the food and the water, and exercising again, and just kind of tapping into this conscious community. I basically I would pray, and I would write down on paper, like, this is my mission, this is why I'm here now, is to serve humanity. And then I was looking for a way to make this like a full-time activity, where I would wake up and it was like boom, I was like full in it, fully in service. And it came to mind that I should go to a holistic school. So I ended up finding this school called Transformational Arts College of Holistic and Spiritual Health, it's a popular school here in Toronto. And I ended up going there. And so then I was, studying like herbology and reflexology, iridology, like aromatherapy, got the Reiki, started to practice energy work, and then had all these modalities. I went for this kind of full program where you practice all the modalities, and I was feeling into what I resonated with the most. And what I did resonate with the most was the Reiki and the energy healing. And this was like years now of really getting non-duality, or being it rather. And just go, like, I was just going to school, and this was my life. So at this time, I believe I was maybe like 4 years clean and sober. And I strayed away from the rooms for a little bit, because I just got into different things. Like, I began a yoga practice, so I would go to yoga instead of going to the meetings of AA now. And so I kind of substituted, because naturally my being was wanting to explore these different things. And so I fell in love with yoga, and I was at school one day, and this being walked in to the class, and there was an empty seat right beside me, and we just kind of knew. It was that you just know that this is like a connection, a soul connection. So she came in, and we just exchanged energy and information, and then I asked if she wanted to get a ride home that night. And after class, so I drove her home, and then she walked out of the home when I dropped her, and she gave me a tensor ring. I had no clue what it was. I didn't know anything. I just thought it was a copper ring. I didn't know that there was an energy field within the ring. So I kind of put it away, and her and I ended up forming a relationship and moving in together very rapidly. And I basically, she then had the tensor tech, which she made with her father, and her father is like kind of a, I would just say he's a wizard. He's a wizard man. He's basically he made tensor tech, and then Sky made tech with her dad, and then she kind of, when she gave it to me, like the magic was already there. Like it was, there was something that I had not yet known but was soon to know. And basically living together now, I saw these rings around the house and this like tensor field generator, and I was told to sit down, or we were lying down in bed, and Sky would put on Slim Sperling videos, and she was like almost like in this energy of just like wait and see what happens. Like when I had no clue, and something about these Slim Sperling videos, I was like, whoa, this is like, this guy's magical, this guy's a true wizard. And he would be talking about like the sacred and the lost cubit rings, and kind of just like going like this and talking about the energy field in the ring, and how it's like a light beam, basically positive energy coming out both ends. And they were like these 5-minute videos. And so I fell in love with Slim, and then Sky also introduced me to, she was following this fellow on Instagram named Brother Gaia, and I went on Brother Gaia's page, and I saw him like twisting the rings. He was like grabbing the copper and like hooking it on the tree and twisting it and dancing and in this super high energy. And I like fell in love with Brother Gaia. I was like, this guy is a legend, you know, like who is this man? And I was then inspired to start to create the rings myself. And then basically, and all of this story I'm telling you this is like Cole's notes. Like I wish I could go in more detail, but the video would be hours and hours long, and that's not necessary for this. But I started to make the technology, and I was still going to school at the time, but I started to gravitate out of the school because I realized that like I found my purpose really is that, you know, I'm gonna start to make tensor technology and dedicate my life to this, and dedicate my life to sharing the message of love and light and free energy, and basically like the study of quantum physics and all of this. Everything was just clicking. And then I came up, the name Moona's Magica came to me one day, and Moona is what Ramana would say is the highest state of consciousness, which is consciousness itself, which is silence, but it's spelled Mouna. And then Moona is like feminine, and I feel that I have a very feminine energy about oneself, and the word like moon as the feminine, and then Moona, and I was like, yeah, I like that name. I like the name Moona's Magica, and I was driving one day and it came to mind, so I wrote it down. And then I was doing trade work at the time. I was going and just like making money to pay rent, And then the last job I ever did, I was like, this is the last job I'm ever in eternity gonna work for anybody else, because I like took my power back fully and meditating and just like realized who I am. And I went and worked this gardening job, and basically I lasted for like a week because the fellow that I was working with I wasn't resonating with, and I was like, I'm not gonna spend my whole summer with this man. Like, I just, the energetics of everything got so sensitive. And yeah, I would actually have people over at our house, and you know, brothers would call and say they needed help and energy work. So I would say, okay, come over, and I would put them on the massage table and then give them what I give, which is simply love and light and presence and unconditional love. And I basically, I was beginning to make rings at the time, and it took me a while to learn to get it, and I was making like sucker punches and mainly just spinning rings. And then I saw the harmonizer, and everything changed. Literally, when I saw the harmonizer, I had to know how to make it. It's something about the energetics of the harmonizer. I just knew, whether I remembered or whatever it was, something in my spirit was, I am going to make these harmonizers. And I would watch these Slim interviews. There's specifically an amazing one with Alan Steinfeld on New Realities, and I literally memorized this interview. And I was watching other things like Twisted Sage interviews, and I love Brother Twisted Sage. There was so much I learned. And all of these, like, you go on YouTube and type in like how to make a tensor ring, Twisted Sage would come up, Slim would come up, a few others, but Maurice Mujiman, there's, you know, some legends in this community. And I would like watch these, and I self-taught myself, and I was asking Brother Gaia questions, and he was giving me responses like how to make the AccuVac coil. And it all came to the point where I called this place called Alternative Thinking in Toronto, and I was like, I quit that job at the time, and I was like, I'm gonna dedicate my life to this, in the sense of like, I'm gonna go all in. And I know I had enough trust in my heart and knowingness of who I was and what the universe is, that I called Alternative Thinking and was like, you guys need to know about tensor technology. And was so excited, talking about how like it increased life force energy, and structures water, harmonizes EMFs, and everything along these lines. And called them super excited, and they basically were like, yeah, we'll have these in the shop, like, this makes sense. And so I went to the shop, and I stocked up, brought the inventory. At the time, my rings were like squares. It was funny, and I was utilizing this kind of this weaker solder, and rings were popping, but still going for it. And I was wrapping sucker punches, and basically I got into this community over Instagram, and through Brother Gaia I found out about other beings, and then I came across this fellow Copper Aura Tools at the time. Him and his partner at the time were making harmonizers in Australia, and so there was another fellow in California that I saw they were making harmonizers, and so I asked them, like, I want to learn how to make a harmonizer. And they ended up like sharing with me how to make one. And once I started making harmonizers, I just went all the way in. It was like all day, every day. And as I was going, I was putting together Moona's Magica, and I was educating myself, and I was sharing, and I basically started uh, this being called Moona's Magica. And I opened up an Etsy account, and I was getting some orders because just years ago, tensor technology was, yes, not as, it's obviously expanding as all things do. And so, yeah, I was able to get orders, and I was doing a little bit of trade work, but these harmonizers were like the codes, you know, and like I had beings reaching out and interested, and I sold a few harmonizers and was making it, and I was gifting like so much tech. I would go into the community spaces and be like, this is tensor technology, just giving away rings, like just so passionate. And ended up, I was in Toronto still, and when I was meditating, I would get the codes to like leave Toronto, and I knew that that was like something, like I was gonna leave Toronto, not being in like full resonance with the city life anymore as the consciousness ascends, right? But I I met this brother Light, who he was getting some tensor tech from Brother Gaia for his family and himself, and Brother Gaia messaged me and said like he needed somebody with a Canadian account who could like do this transaction. And yeah, so I met Brother Light through this, and Brother Light ended up, he was in Costa Rica, and I was just going full force, like building presence online, and just really focusing on rings and harmonizers and playing with all the qubits, and like just going all the way in. And then Brother Light was like, come out to Costa Rica, and I want to learn how to make tensor technology. So I was like, yeah, I'll come out, and ended up coming out there with some copper and some tools, and we basically, we were living up in the mountains near this place Dominical and the Uvita area, and got there and just went at it. We just started making it. Like the first day, set up the table, looking out into the jungle. I still have all the footage of this, and Light just came and was so willing to learn. And so we naturally started to make the tech together, and at the time we were working on a sister's land, and she was building a greenhouse. So we were going around and putting rings in the greenhouse, you know, learning about electroculture and paramagnetism and free energy, basically, and kind of this new earth knowingness was in our hearts. And also, like, Brother Light and I connected through the Great Spirit, and we were saying the same prayers, and basically Spirit just aligned us, and that was it. Like I met a very close brother, and there were other brothers that were with us, and we were just like working on this land, and we were gridding the land and putting harmonizers in the greenhouse, building pyramids, and we were able to get copper from this spot called Iguana Verde in Costa Rica. And so we had our copper supply, and then we would like, I was going back still, like I would stay there for a month and then come back to Toronto, and then I would like find the place. I was basically just like couch surfing, but I kept Moonas going. I like carried the tool bag with me, And everywhere I went, I would make a harmonizer. And basically, I structured my life from making rings, making harmonizers, fulfilling orders. And if I had nothing to do, I would do that. So it like held me, it supported me, and I knew that like I would be good. I would feel in alignment if I was making this technology, because there's this magic about it. And basically, yeah, like Light learned how to make the tech at this point, and then I ended up we were basically going to the market, and we were sharing the technology at the markets, and beings were walking by and had never ever seen this, because it's the beginning of New Earth, and we're just bringing back into the collective awareness about free energy, and we're remembering who we are as divine beings, and then that goes hand in hand with the technology that we utilize. And basically, uh, this was the mission, right? To bring New Earth onto this plane, which is to be in unity consciousness, to be in the heart center, and to be creating this technology, and then to share the teachings of divine love through this channel of Moona's Magica, which is just a fractal and an expression and a manifestation of the one creator, the one infinite creator, which we all are. So I am simply just a vessel for, these hands to create these tools, because when I, put myself up to the creator and say, let me be a servant of the positive polarity, this is what clearly creator has me making right now and bringing onto this earth. And then also I love to share the teachings of non-duality and self-inquiry along with all of this. But so I came back to Toronto, and I'm here now, and I've been here since. And just kind of, it's full time, really, like receiving orders, making orgone now. I've been creating orgonite pyramids and expanding Moona's Magica a little bit. I love the orgone because it allows you to be very creative, and same thing with the harmonizers, right? We've colored the spheres and created these orgone spheres, but being a creative being, I'm always looking for new ways to channel this energy. So got all these orgone pyramids now, and I just love to be happy, I love to be healthy, and I love to be free. And so the vision of all of this is to really be here now and to create. I'm filming. Yeah. Is the vision is to be love, and to bring free energy to the earth, and to be in the heart space, and to love all, and to basically just be a servant to the law of one, and the law of love, and the law of light, and to create this technology and spread the light and spread these energy fields onto the earth and transmute disharmony within and without, to transmute the negative to the positive, the harmful to the beneficial. And that's what this technology does. And practicing the teachings of the I am God in action, I am the power of divine love acting. I am the law of forgiveness. I am. And coupling these I am statements with whatever one wants to bring. And knowing that it is now the beginning again of a cycle, and the earth is shifting, and this technology has a massive part in the return and the remembrance of who we are. So it's a little bit about how one is here now and the overall journey so far, and the mission, and basically to just simply bring awareness to the fact that only love is real, and that that New Earth is here now, leaving you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator.